Welcome to another episode of OpenMic. We're glad that you're with us today. My name is Jared, and I'm here with Ryan and Coco. How are you guys doing today?
Doing so good.
Doing good. The weather is not good.
It is raining a ton today, and it's nasty.
Yeah.
But I have been praying for the weather for October 1st and 2nd
That's right.
because that's our young adult conference here at High Street. It's going to be a great thing. We're doing some things outside. We're going to have a big carnival outside after one of the nights. It's going to be a great time. But if you go to highstreet.org/YAConf, C-O-N-F, you can sign up today. It's $25. It's going to be a great time. We hope you sign up and join us in October for our Young Adults Conference. But what we're talking about today is the question, do they like me? And I think everybody's probably asked that question at some point. You walked away from a conversation with somebody you just met, or you were in a room with somebody and they looked at you a certain way.
Yeah.
Or you talked to your mom and you're like, I don't know if they like me. I have got to admit, I wasn't a teacher's pet, but I liked getting in the teacher's ear a little bit. And like, I wanted them to like me. I definitely wanted them to like me, and I had two teachers the same semester. One of them, this was at community college, so take it all in stride.
I thought you were talking about being homeschooled. I was like, I hope your mom.
No, so my mom,
Dad.
yeah, that's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at earlier. No, but when I was in community college, I had one class that was all he did was scout for the baseball team and teach golf. And I would come up to him and ask like, oh, did you hear about that kid in Hillsboro that's been doing really well? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go scout him later today. Did you do the homework? Yeah. You can go. I'm not going to do that much today. And I was like, are you sure? And yeah. So like, I felt like I was in his good graces and I loved it. And it honestly set like a bad trajectory for my community college career. Because then I was like, if I can get in with everybody, they'll just let me go home early. And I had one professor that just did not like me. And I don't know why. And it like bothered me to my core that she didn't like me. But then I felt like I started acting a certain way because she didn't like me. This is very community college, but we did a field trip to the History Museum.
Wow.
And I got away from the group and walked by myself.
Wow.
So
That's how you know it was intense.
that's how you know it was intense. And I
Yeah.
feel like we didn't like each other by the end of it.
Man.
So I don't remember her name, but I'm sorry. I was kind of a jerk to you because we
Walk by yourself.
we didn't like each other. I don't know what it was, but everybody's kind of had those conversations with themselves in their heads.
Yes.
Do they like me? First, I mean, one, is it a natural thing? Is it okay to ask the question, do they like me? What are your initial thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think this question is so natural for us because some of the human basic needs is we want to be accepted by other people. Like everyone knows that. And I think that it's okay to want to like people. My personality is like woo. So it's like I want to win others over. Like I very much want that. And when someone doesn't like me, I'm like, what can I do to win them over? Like
Start
I want to do
Venmoing
that.
them like $5 for coffee.
Yeah, go get some Starbucks on me. But I think it's so natural for us to want people to like us. And I think that with this conversation today, I'm excited because I've had a lot of conversations with other people where they just assume people don't like them. That's their natural disposition. And I just remember growing up, my parents were like, hey, we're assuming that people like us. And when you assume that, then you're not worried about what if people really don't like you. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a natural thing because I mean we talk a lot of times in different contexts of we are designed not to have this, but because of our brokenness, we have a void in our hearts that is designed to be filled with God. But obviously, because of our sin, we're separated from that. And I think that gives us that inclination to want to be accepted by something. And I think a lot of times we forget what that is supposed to be filled with. And I think we can, we talk a lot of times, we fill that with things like partying, drugs, alcohol, addictions, literally anything. And I think sometimes that can be filled with this need to be approved by people and accepted. And I think the reason why we say that's natural is because we were designed to be accepted by God. But we forget that. It's almost like sometimes it's not enough. And so we want to get it from other people.
Right.
But I think a lot of times what we've learned and what we will learn, especially by having this conversation is that you don't have to be, it's not, we're not the only ones who are like, man, I feel like not everyone likes me. Like that's kind of everybody. Everybody has that feeling. And we want that. We want to make sure that everyone likes us and we want to be approved. And that's never going to be enough. We're never going to have enough approval by anybody.
Right.
And God is the only one who can have and give us that acceptance that we're really,
Yeah.
really looking for. So I think it is definitely a natural thing for us to try to like, it's a natural desire for us to have because we were created
Right.
to have that.
I
Yeah.
think as we start the conversation, the thing I don't want to do is like we paint it as, it's natural, but it's so bad that you think,
Yeah.
acceptance is not a bad thing. And I think we see that like in the way that Jesus walked on the earth and he accepted, he brought 12 guys in and he would preach to 5,000 people. Like he was surrounded himself with people. So the idea of like, we don't do anything for person. Yes, that's correct. You don't do it for the approval, but it doesn't mean you shun people. It doesn't mean you keep people away from you. There's so much good that happens in community or with people that like, I just think about some of the most spiritually forming times in my life were with people.
Yeah.
Because they showed me kindness, because they showed me some of the attributes of God. But when does it start to be a problem when you want that acceptance, when you want someone to like you? When does it start to be an issue?
Yeah, I think with the base level, knowing that it's okay to naturally want people to like you, I think that's good. And I think when it becomes an issue is when it becomes an idol. And so when I say an idol, it's something that you are just focusing on and that's all you can think about. And I think probably all of us have had moments in our life where we have just been so focused on, I think I said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think I did, I don't think they like me. I think that, and we're just assuming, and it's like, really, maybe that's false. And we're just coming up with it in our head. And so I think what we need to do is, if you're constantly thinking this question of, do people like me? I think it's good to stop and take inventory and say, okay, like, is this all I'm focusing on? Do I care more about their approval than God's approval? Or, what's like the balance there? And so I think that it can easily turn into something that's like an issue. But I also think that it's something that we can deal with in like a healthy manner. Ryan, you kind of had a story about this.
Yeah.
Would you share that with us?
Yeah, I just remember there was a season of my life, even just in this last year, really last 2 years, where I felt like I would leave literally every conversation having this question in my heart of like, did I say I'll walk away and I'm like, did I say the wrong thing? Did I like it? It could have been a great conversation, and I'm still in my head like, did they like me? Like, did I say something that like they're gonna be like, oh, that's weird, or like, are they gonna go talk to somebody about something that I said? And I just felt like that was so unhealthy, because the reality is that they brought whatever I thought I was like tripping on or tripping over, like they probably didn't even catch it. You know what I mean? Like they're probably not even thinking about it. And I was so reminded, like when you spoke about Jesus and living in his day, like I was just reminded, like, man, not even everyone would think like, oh, Jesus, how could you not like him? But there were so many people who hated Jesus, and he did no wrong. He did no wrong, and people still hated him so much that they killed him. And
So
I haven't been killed because people don't like me. And that just reminds me, like, is there anything, I think a lot of times we think of like, what can we compromise in our priorities? Like you were saying, of like, when does it become an idol? And I think that is whenever we compromise on our priorities for other people's approval. Like what, even not even if it's like, what does God call me to do that I'm willing to compromise? But like, what are my priorities in a sense of like, man, and this week I wanted to spend time with my family, or I wanted to do this because I knew I needed to do it. But instead I'm going to go hang out with these people because I don't want them to not like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that story about Jesus that you said is so interesting, because I think, I don't know, we can shape so much of our lives based on the people around us, and that's legitimate. The people around you are going to shape who you are. But if Jesus had people that he did no wrong, and he had people that hated him and wanted to kill him and wanted bad things to happen to him, what does that communicate? It communicates that there's nothing you can do that will please every person around you. And that's one of the things that we talked about before this, is that there will just be some people that do not like you.
And that's okay.
And it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. I think the only way we can be okay with that is knowing where we stand with God. And I think that's so huge. And so like, if you're struggling with this, I would encourage you, look up verses of like, who am I in Christ? And I mean, there's so many verses that talks about that we are joint heirs with Christ. We've been chosen by Christ. We're beloved. Like we are chosen by God. So because we have this relationship with God, this vertical relationship, and if we can have this good and well, and we know like, okay, because I have a relationship with Jesus, this is where I stand, right? We're chosen by God. We're going to be okay. And then whenever it comes to our friendships and our relationships here, it's like, okay, if this is okay, then this is going to work out because we already know where we stand with God.
Yeah.
And I think knowing too, when those people who don't like you come, because it will come and it happens, although I don't like it, it's like, man, that's unfortunate, but we're going to be okay because I'm good with God.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that and just being settled in who you are is huge. So I would encourage anyone out there that is just struggling with like, man, I am so obsessed with this of like, do people like me? I would encourage them to get some verses, write some verses down. You can literally Google is our friend. You can literally Google like verses about my identity in Christ and help like renew your mind with those scriptures so that can be the base whenever you're going into a room. It's not like, man, do people like me? It's like, I'm chosen by God. I'm good. And I'm going to assume the other people in this room like me until they say otherwise.
Yeah. And that's so important because I think where you're getting your approval from will show you when it's going to run out.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're getting your approval from your friends, you may not always have that. You may not always be doing something that everybody in the world is going to like. We've talked about it. That's not going to happen. It really it's not because it didn't even happen for Jesus. And so we know that if we're getting our approval from God and if we're living a life that reflects who he is and what he wants us to do, that we don't have to worry about that. We don't need to worry about it. And it's exactly what you're saying. If your relationship with God as well, then your relationship with others should be, because those who are also following Jesus will recognize, okay, this person, and it really comes down to like, we're not all perfect.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I remember I was in a season of life where like, I just felt like my people skills were like off because I was like, people be annoying me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like tired. I would get home and be like, I'm just tired.
You didn't
of,
like anybody,
everybody.
man.
Yes. And what I had to come to the realization of is like, everybody is gonna like fall short of even your own standard of people.
Right.
Not that we even deserve to have one. And I was really reminded like, I need to instead not look at what people are doing wrong, but like look for the best in those around me and look for the best in the people who are annoying me, because there's a reality that like people are gonna get on your nerves, but at the end of the day, you have to say, you know what, I probably do that too.
Right.
And that's just gonna happen. And so instead, what I need to choose to do is just, you know, they're really good at this, and I'm not, and I respect them for that. And I think that a lot of times the desire to be liked will slowly go away whenever you in turn decide to, I'm going to try my best to like everybody else.
Right.
I think that is a big
that's
mindset
key.
change.
Yeah.
That's good.
I remember I had somebody who was talking about their marriage, and they said that they changed a couple of words in the way that they prayed for their relationship with their wife. And he said that he changed it from like, God, I just want to be the best man for my wife, which is a good prayer. But he changed his prayer to, God, I want to be everything that you need me to be for my wife.
Yeah.
And then it changed his mindset from like, she has these things she needs me to do to like, I just want to be what God needs.
Right.
I don't want to fulfill
That's
every
good.
little need that she says that she needs. I want to just do the ones that God says that she needs. And that's such a different shape to like, you know what? You don't have to be everything for every person.
Yeah.
You can't be. I mean, Jesus let people down in his context where they weren't who he thought he was supposed to be. So how is it that you are going to be everything that everyone thinks you should be? We're like, man, I just want to be the best person I can be to you as coworkers and friends and as your pastor. Like, I want to be the best version that I can, but I can't be everything to you.
Right.
So I'm going to pray that I can serve you guys well. I was reading Galatians 1:10. Paul's saying, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? For if I were trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." So he kind of paints that in contrast of like, I can serve people or I can serve God. And I think we would if we backed up and said, okay, how could I sleep best at night? I served God today.
Right.
And I served God by being kind to the people around me. I served God by speaking truth to the people around me. And knowing that my Heavenly Father, my vertical relationship is good. So hopefully that poured out into other people. And I served you all well. And other than that, I did everything that I could.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think whenever you're living a life that reflects, the fruit of the Spirit, that reflects Jesus, the people who should be, because I think it is important, like we've talked about that it's not bad to want to be liked. And I think there is a reality that like, if you feel like you're like, no, I'm living the fruit of the Spirit, but if everybody is like, even like the people who should, and really be like, showing love towards you, if even they're not against you, but if they're not like vibing with it, then there probably is a reality that there is some things that you do need to change.
Right.
And there is a reality that like if everyone isn't probably loving being with you or like spending time with you, there might be a chance that you are doing some things that can change, that you should change. And I think that's something that's important too, because there are things that we can do, because whenever you live a life that resembles Christ, the people, I think of like my church family, my coworkers, my pastor, if they are saying like, Ryan, no, you're really doing a great job, and like you're living a life that reflects Jesus, there might be some people who don't, approve of what you're doing, or like what you're doing, or like you in general. But as long as the people, there's some people that you will know when they are approving of what you're doing and when they like what you're doing, or not like what you're doing, but like you. It's such a weird term to say. Like, do they like me? Like, not that we need to chase after that, but I think it is important that we are like being servants, and that overall the people who are supposed to like us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think something that's helped me a ton is, instead of me being like, man, am I going to, are people going to like me? I'm going to go look for the people who, man, I'm going to go show them like you are valued. And so we like flip it on its head. Instead of like, man, is it all about me? It's like, okay, let's flip this on our head and be like, how can I add value to people? How can I leave this conversation? Because we want this. Yeah. Like, how can I leave this conversation?
I like it when people are that way to me. Yeah.
So it's like, instead of me looking for that, it's like, okay, what if I do that to other people and look to bless other people, look to add value? And I think that has changed my perspective in friendships and just in relationships with people I meet on the regular. It's like, okay, like one of my goals is like, if I'm going to spend 5 more minutes with them or more, how can I add value to them? Because that's the kind of person that I'm like the most encouraged by. And I think that Jesus would want to add value to people, want to encourage people. And so I think of the verse too, like, as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with people. And so I think that's so helpful when we're talking about relationships and friendships, because as much as it depends on us, we're going to do our best to live at peace with people. And I think that's so huge. That helps me to put some things in perspective, and to know that, man, I have to have grace for people, because again, I'm not perfect, and I am not a good friend sometimes. I am not, whatever. And so it's so helpful to know, like, man, if I can show others grace, like, that's what God would want me to do. And I know people need to show me grace too. So.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned this earlier. Give that practical example of like when you walk into a room with 2 different mindsets.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I've talked to a lot of people who naturally their mindset is, I walk into the room and I'm terrified to say anything to anybody because I don't think people like me. And I've had conversations with girls that I'm like, wait, why are we assuming that? Because that's like the negative side of it. What if instead we switched our mindset and said, I'm going to walk into this room knowing who I am in Christ, and I'm going to assume people like me. And I think that we have 2 people that have those 2 different things side by side. The person that is assuming people like them have a much better time in that social situation. And so, like, I would just encourage anybody out there, like, if you are feeling this, like, if you're constantly like, oh my word, I don't think people like me, and I'm going into this room and I'm feeling this, I would say for one social interaction, whether that's church, whether it's going to a coffee shop, whatever, just switch your mindset to, I'm going to assume everybody in this room likes me, and I'm just going to go for it. And I think that is such a better place to live. And, I think I think it's something that you should try for sure.
I think just changing your thought pattern, and it takes time. It really does. And it takes like a shift in what you do, and it takes time before you walk into that social situation. But trying to find a moment or a time to say, how can I bless, add value to, how can I help the people, encourage the people that are around me? And it changes your perspective on friendships, social situations, groups, small groups, that like, it changes that. Even work, when you go in, instead of like, man, I'm going to come in and do mine and hope that the annoying guy from accounting doesn't come over. Like, I think I'm that guy here. Dang it. But you're gonna try to come and add value to the people around you, instead of like, I'm gonna come in and get my stuff done, as opposed to you come in and go, man, Coco did a great job with that project. So I'm going to go tell her she did a great job. Yeah. Like, gratefulness, I think, sometimes gets stopped at our mouths. And we feel it in our hearts. And I think you did a great job. I made a note of it when I saw it, but I didn't tell you. So I think some of those things of like, just saying what comes to your mind when
Yeah.
they're positive and saying,
Yeah.
man, I saw you did a great job. Ryan, I love that thing that you did. Like being that person, everybody loves a fan. Everybody loves
Yeah.
to be encouraged, and changing your mindset to when you walk into a room to how can I bless the people that are in here?
Yeah.
And wow, I've never met them before. How can I bless them? Shifts everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then we're an extension of Jesus to other people. Because how many times, like, I've literally prayed before, like, God, I need encouragement today.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. I will get a text message of someone that's like, hey, I just want to say, like, you're doing an awesome job in this. And I'm literally, like, moved to tears because I prayed, God, will you encourage me? And he's done that. And so I think about that, and I'm like, well, what if I'm that conduit of God's goodness in someone else's life for an encouraging word? And the Bible says our words either give life or give death.
Yeah.
And so if we have that option, man, I would love to be people that we just speak life to people all the time. And that's an environment that is attractive. I mean, I think of anybody who doesn't know the Lord and we want to share the gospel with them. It's like, man, we want them to come into an environment where people are, saying life to people. And that's different than the world.
And that's such a contrasting thing, because I think the idea of the question that we're talking about today, do they like me, is like, what does it make a difference if I'm in a room? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the argument. What does it make a difference if I come in the room and sit quietly in the corner, or if I am engaging and encouraging people? Does it make that big of a difference? But I think when you view it in that context of like, we have the opportunity to come in and either do nothing or speak life to people.
Yeah.
Man, I want to be a conduit of Christ to the people around me. And if I'm constantly closed off, I may not be able to have that conversation.
Well, and Jesus came to serve. And so we get to follow his example of who he is. And so with that example of coming to serve, we can serve in a way that's talking to people, to encouraging people. So I think that if we take Jesus as example, then it's like, man, like, we're here to serve. So it's not about us. It helps us with our pride. It helps us with our selfishness when we're like, I'm going to set that aside and I am going to focus on others and watch God work.
Another thing that's important is I knew, I would never have, something that I've grown in, I feel like immensely and still am growing in, is humility and pridefulness. And I think in this last year, I felt like I had not completely overcome it, but I felt like I had gotten a lot better. And I think really what happened was it had turned from outward pridefulness that I knew of to hidden pride. And I think what revealed it to me was I felt a desire in myself to be the main character. And that's something that's like published now. It's like postered everywhere. It's like, man, main character vibes. Like I'm the person, you know, and that's not who we're called to be. We're called to be last, because Jesus tells us that, those who are last really are first, and we are to serve others. And so I think that's something that is, I always listen for what are the warning signs, what are the lights flashing,
that's good.
on my engine. What's my engine light that's telling me hey, I have pridefulness? Because something I think of, I was listening to a message that was talking about pridefulness, and it was comparing it to a carbon monoxide detector in your house, because you can't smell carbon monoxide, you can't taste it, you can't see it, but it's there, and if it lies there for or stays there for too long, it's going to kill you. You know what I mean? And I think pride works the same way. And I think I was reminded reading scripture that scripture tells us that God rejects the prideful, those who are prideful. So what sin do you think the enemy is going to hit you with? If God's going to reject those who are prideful, the enemy is going to hit us with pridefulness. And so I think whenever our pridefulness and our humility, when that balance is in check, that we aren't going to struggle as much with this. And something else that's important to remember is the only weapon that the enemy has is a lie. And so what he's going to do is, whenever we're talking about walking into a room, he's going to rise, you walk in, hit you with the lie of, I don't think everyone here likes you. And then what that whole time all you're going to be doing is trying to get people to approve of what you're doing. You're not going to be, and the enemy only attacks what's valuable. And that's so encouraging to me, because that means, hey, I have so much potential in this room to speak life to people, to uplift people, to be the person that God has called me to be. And so I know that whenever I feel that lie, it's, no, I have other plans today, because God has called me for more.
That's good. Ryan, what are some of those warning signs that you talked about, like your check engine light?
Yeah.
My stinking check engine light just kills me, because I'm always like, I don't know
I
what to do.
assume yours is always on.
Hey, actually, I got it taken care of, but then another light came on.
Okay.
So I don't know what that is about, but
It'll go away at some point.
At some point, maybe. We'll see. But it's the most frustrating thing to me, because I'm always like, I don't know what to do with this, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the check engine lights that come on, or the things that come on are warning signs too? I love that analogy, because all of us deal with pride. I think probably on a daily basis for me, I'm like, oh, that was a prideful thought, or that was terrible. And it's an enemy of our heart that will take root, and it just buries itself. And then it's like, oh my gosh, like it is a terrible thing that can overtake us. So what are some of those warning signs?
I think the desire to be the main character, like we've said. I think another thing that's important, another warning sign is, are they talking about me? Leaving a conversation. This kind of really pertains to what we're talking about is, you know, do they like me, but also are they going to talk about me? Because that's something I shared that I was like worried about. Are my friends going and talking about me? And the reality is they probably are. People, I remember I lived a life, you know, in this season I talked about like living where I'm like, man, are people talking about me? And the truth is people are talking about you, but it just matters what you're giving them to talk about. You know, are you giving them things that are like, man, like Ryan did this, or you know, Ryan did that? Are you giving them good things to talk about, or are you giving them bad things? Because when you live your life just worried about people, whether or not people are talking about you, you're kind of chasing an empty road, because the reality is people are, you know. So I think that's another thing is, are people talking about me? And then the last is what we're talking about, like, do they like me? Because what Jared said is, you don't like, it doesn't matter. What does it matter if people like you? You know what I mean? If you're living the life that God has called you to be, we've said this is kind of all wrapping together, like, you know, Jesus, not even everyone like Jesus. And so if we are living a life of like, man, I just want to be liked by everybody, it's probably a life of pride. And that's really the, you know, I'm always reminded, like, don't ask questions to the question, like, are you prideful? Well, let me ask you a different question. Are you worrying about this? Are you worrying about that? And get into like the really root of it. And I think the root of it is pride. Yeah. I think that's the cause for our need to be liked by people, is that.
Yeah, I would add worry and fear to that in some aspect, because as my worry pops out, as that kind of gets uncovered, it's covering something else. I'm worried that you're going to see me as less than I was before, or you're going to see me who I really am. So I kind of worry, and worry comes with anxiety and fear, and God didn't give us a spirit of fear. So when you see that fear coming up, it's because I think your opinion of me is going to change. So I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I start to have worry and anxiety and fear. And all that is the calm before the storm of what's happening underneath in my heart, because something's getting unearthed that you might really see the real me. And that's a quieter form of pride. But really, if it's the situation that you're talking about of people, I walk into a social situation and I'm worried about what people think of me. Okay, why are we worried about what people think of us? It's because we have an issue with the way that we present ourselves in our pridefulness, so that I want people to like me. But when we change our perspective to, I'm an ambassador for God, I don't care what they think about me. They could care less what I think. But if I'm showing them and I'm a 45-degree angle mirror and they're looking at me and going, man, he's just reflecting Christ to everything around him, I don't care. It doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter what they think of me. They can say whatever they want.
Yeah, I didn't come up with this, but one time I heard the evaluation for pride, kind of the warning sign, is how you respond to the crap in your life. And crap spells out this: your criticism, your rejection, your acceptance, and your praise. When you look at those 4 areas in your life, the crap in your life, that's where you'll be able to evaluate, like, okay, when I get criticized, does it just defeat me? Where I'm like, I just need to stop what I'm doing. The rejection, does rejection stop you? Whenever you get rejected, do you push forward? Do you push in with the priorities and the values that God has given you, or do you just give up? The acceptance, are you looking for acceptance? Are you looking for people to like you? And when you get praise, because that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be reminded, be encouraged that you're doing a good thing. How do you respond to that? Does that get to your head, or are you like, man, I'm so thankful that, you know, I'm choosing to follow God, but also people are encouraging me? Are you thankful, or are you like boastful about it? I think that's something that's important, and a warning sign as well.
I think just really practically, how can we how can we go from a state of always worrying about, do people like me, to like just assuming people like us? I think we can just give this to God and pray about it and say, Lord, like, this is something that I struggle with, like this pride in my life, or this worry and fear, or, I'm just always consumed by this thought. And I think when we can bring that to God and say, God, this is something I am struggling with, will you help me? he is going to help us. And so I think definitely if you're listening to this and this is something you struggle with, I would say stop right now. You can press pause on this podcast and just give it to God and say, Lord, what am I supposed to do with this? Will you help me look up these verses and replace that lie with truth, so that you can overcome this? And I think it's like this daily thing of like, okay, I'm going into a new social situation. Lord, will you help me with this?
Yeah.
And there's going to be times where I fail sometimes, and I will leave conversations like, dang, like, I don't know if I said the right things, like whatever. And then I'm like, wait, what? Why am I feeling this way? And so I have to just go back and like, Lord, I'm sorry. I'm feeling this way. Help me to have the right perspective in this situation. So
Yeah. Guys, that was great. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.